Welcome to the Voices of OUTCAN podcast. Join Military Family Services US as we explore the experiences our Canadian Armed Forces families have while on OUTCAN. Leaving your home to live in another country can be an exciting adventure, but it is also a time filled with unexpected challenges. Get a glimpse into the CAF OUTCAN world with these unique stories of resiliency and courage. Share in their struggles and cheer for their triumphs. Here are the voices of our OUTCAN families. Welcome to another episode of the Voices of OUTCAN podcast, where we share the stories of our Canadian Armed Forces families who have been on an out of Canada, or what we call OUTCAN posting. I am your host for today's episode, Joanna Church. Today is especially meaningful because our guest checks two boxes that don't get quite the same attention on OUTCAN as they do back in Canada. And those two boxes are, first, being a francophone family posted in the southern United States, and being a virtual volunteer with MFSUS as part of the Outreach Advisory Committee. Our guest is Anne Vaillancourt, and I probably didn't say her last name correctly.
No, you did great.
Thank you. And she is a military spouse for over 20 years with two teenage children, and their family's going into their fourth year of their OUTCAN posting to awesome San Antonio, Texas, where her lieutenant colonel husband is working for U.S. Army North as a security cooperation operations officer. That is a tongue twister, and that's in English. So that's a mouthful. There are many reasons I asked Anne to be a guest on the podcast for the month of April. First and foremost, she shares a last name with my husband, so Vaillancourt, although his family goes by the anglicized name of Vaillancourt. And I think you find that a lot in Canada, where you see two different versions of a name. It's spelled the same, but depending on where you grew up, how it's pronounced might be completely different. But what really struck me over the last year, as I have had a chance to get to know Anne virtually, is her absolute love for her OUTCAN posting. Even though she is in a location where I can probably guarantee less than 0.1% of the population speaks her primary language of French. And I can say that when my husband was posted to Quebec, where I spoke zero French, I did not have a great attitude like Anne had. And I spent about 3 years feeling completely overwhelmed, but not Anne. She has really embraced her OUTCAN posting. And the other thing about Anne that really struck me and that I wanted to share with our listeners is her decision to be a part of our very first virtual advisory committee, taking over the administration of our traveling ambassador, Rocky, which we'll chat about in a little bit, and then not just participating in virtual coffee hours to help support other CAF families OUTCAN, but she actually felt it was important to begin a French coffee hour to support other francophone families who want to get together and chat in their first language and support each other. And since April is Volunteer Appreciation Month, I couldn't think of anyone better suited to chat with than Anne. So Anne, welcome to the Voices of OUTCAN podcast.
Merci, merci, merci. Thank you so much, Joanna. So maybe I will put a few words in French for my French people or CAF families that understand the language. So yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really humbled.
Absolutely. And you know, I don't speak a lick of French, but I do want to invite you throughout our conversation, sprinkle any French in that you would like for any Francophone families who may be listening, and that will give them that little extra connection today. All right, well, let's just jump in and talk about, why do you love Texas so much? Tell us what living in San Antonio has been like for you and for your family.
Well, you know what? When we moved and our families and friends learned that we were moving to Texas, everybody were like, whoa, be aware of guns and horses.
Well,
I haven't seen a gun
Oh, no.
nor a horse in in my whole experience up to now. Maybe one gun that somebody was wearing, and I'm not talking about a policeman or anything like that, but that's about it. So it's not, like French people from France, when they come to Canada and they're looking for Indians, with their feathers and everything. It's like you come to Texas and you think you will see, like, yes, you will see cowboy hats and boots, but it's not half of, or even a quarter of what people think back in Canada. So people here are very, very friendly. We have a great neighborhood with great neighbors that took us under their wings and help us out when we had any question or anything that we need. We even have a Facebook page for our neighborhood. So anything you need, you just type something there and somebody will answer or help out or bring you something or anything like that. So the community here is very, very, what did I say, integrative.
Integrate, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you feel really welcome compared to other places we moved, and it wasn't as welcoming as here in San Antonio. The weather is amazing. No snow, or almost, right? We had a surprise a few weeks ago, but usually, the weather is great. The activities, like my son is into mountain bike, and compared to Canada, where you can mountain bike only maybe 3 to 4 months a year, here it's all year long. We met a beautiful group of mountain bikers, coaches, and they all became friends to us. So we connected with them. Also, every time I move from place to place, I like to volunteer. So I start with school because it's, where the kids go. Usually I go see and have a better picture of what's going on, what do my kids do and everything. So I also volunteered in some group my kids were involved in. And then I had some friends on base because we live outside of the base. And I made some friends on base because they greeted us because they knew we were new, and it was Mexican friends. So it was just plain amazing, all the welcoming people we got to meet. And beside the human part, the hill country, the whole Texas area is amazing. And with mountain bike, when it's race time, we have to travel. So we got to, visit a lot of places that we haven't heard of because it's in ranches or little cities that maybe you wouldn't go, but it gives you a sense of how the people live, the culture. So you really see, the heart of Texas, how everything works and how people are. And it's amazing. It's a great, great community.
What's the city of San Antonio like? Is there anything that you really love to do there that your family has found within the city?
So like when you are in the heart of the city, near, I would say, Alamo City, so near base, the Fort Sam base, you have that great little place called the Pearl. And there you have nice restaurants and you have a big area where you can be outside. You have a market during the weekend. In the center of San Antonio, you have what's called the Riverwalk. So that Falls River, because they built it when there was, I'm not sure about the word, inondation. So when a lot of water comes in.
Like a flood?
How do you say that? Floods. So when there were floods back in the 1920s, they decided to build this river walk so the center of the city wouldn't be flooded, because it happened once and they said never again. So they built this, and around the river walk, you have now hotels and restaurants. So it's lovely to walk, and all the flowers and all nature that is around this is amazing. And the Pearls connects to that part. So it's really nice. You can have a walk, a run. It's amazing. It's a really beautiful place. Also, you have a lot of parks within San Antonio, and they're trying to do what is called a green belt. So the goal of this is to surround the city of San Antonio with a biking route.
Like a biking path?
Yeah, biking path. So you could go around San Antonio. It's going to take you a week, but everything will be connected at one point. So that is just amazing. So you can walk, you can bike, you can do whatever, and it's really amazing.
Now, do you feel that the rest of your family is loving Texas as much as you?
Yes, because we are staying one more year. And if we could, we would stay 3 more years. So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
my son really enjoy his high school. My daughter loves her high school and all of her friends. So they made a lot of friends. It's easy. I feel it's so easy to be in San Antonio. For me personally, I could retire here, basically. So that's how much I love it.
Wow. Now, you had said for your kids that you felt it was important to raise them fully bilingual. So they were in English school. So we hear a lot in Canada about English speaking kids going to French school, but you did the opposite. You had your French children go to English speaking school so that you felt, because you felt that was really important for them. And honestly, that does give kids a leg up in this world being fully bilingual. And you felt that that was really important for them when you took this OUTCAN posting. Do you think that that really did make such a significant difference that they did have that solid English background?
Yes, because as a francophone, when I was in elementary school and high school, even though it was a French school, but we learned English. But if you're not immersed in English, then for me, my bubble was French. So even though I had, English classes from third grade to high school in French, you finish in 11th grade. So to 11th grade, I wasn't a person that was it wasn't easy for me to speak other language because I had to learn Spanish too, but I was just struggling. So it wasn't in me. English was a little bit easier because we had a little bit of English around us, but not that much. Because when you live in Montreal, you can have all your services in French. And so what happened was I saw how I felt, and I saw some other friends that don't speak English, and it's hard to get jobs. It's hard to get around. It's hard to travel,
Yeah.
basically, right? To get out of this bubble. So knowing that we could go out can one day, I was like, I want my kids at least to have a base because it's when you're young that you can learn second language. It's easier, right? As you
Yeah.
said earlier, for you being in Quebec, it was hard because you're an adult and learning a new language is really, really hard because you have to practice and your brain is set and
Yeah.
it's harder,
It doesn't
basically
want, my
harder.
brain didn't want to
Unless
learn.
unless you're really immersed in the language and you have to survive, then you will have to learn it. But if you're not in the surviving mode, then you will find other ways to not have to use it.
That's the truth.
So yeah. So that's what I did for my kids. And because my husband is military, because we are both francophones, we are not allowed to put our kids in English school when you stay in Quebec. Okay, so that's a law because they want to keep, the culture. And I totally get it. But the thing is, for myself, my opinion is that we are a bilingual country. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering how come it's not, Canada wide where everybody would be bilingual because
Yeah.
it's our two official language. And since I'm in the military, that's a thing I see. And I'm sad for the English people that struggle sometimes, to go to Quebec or whatever. And those French people like me that when you have to move somewhere else, you also struggle. And I think we shouldn't have to go through that. But like I said, that's my opinion. So my kids were able to go to a English school in Quebec City for a few years. Then we had to move to Gatineau, and it was another story. We couldn't get them in English school. That it even though you live near a school, at that point it was an elementary school. The kids could not attend that school because there was too much kids. So I could have put them 1 year in English school, but the year after we weren't sure that they would go to the school next to the house. So they would have to change 3 schools in 3 years. So I was like, okay, that's a bit too much for me. So I decided to put them back in French school. But my goal at first when I put them in English school is because of the law, and we are francophones. If they do more than 5 years in English, then they get the right to have their kids to go to English school at
Oh,
one
that's
point in their
interesting.
life.
What an
right?
interesting rule.
Yes, it's very, and it's complicated also, but because we didn't go within the 5 years, then they won't be allowed. But I thought, when you have the possibility to put either your kids in French or English, depending on where you live, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to provide to my kids.
So in their schools in Texas,
Yes.
do people think they're a little exotic because they speak French? Like, do they stand out at all because of that? How have kids treated them in that regard?
Well, because they went to English school, they have no accent.
Oh,
So
really?
people cannot know they're French speaking. But with me, they don't listen to me when I speak in English. So I always speak in French. So people are surprised because they're like, what are you talking? Because it's not Spanish, right? But it sounds kind of, so they say, oh no, I speak French. And we go, we speak very fast. So they're
I
amazed. They're plain amazed by the fact that they speak so well English, but then they can switch to French like that, right?
I feel like your son especially could really use the French language skills to pick up chicks because the ladies always love that French accent.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, but he's not there yet. So
Thank God, right?
some boys do, but he's like more like really into bikes. So girls are not his thing really right now.
Now, I know we can't get usually too much into our spouses and what they do, but your husband, I want to backtrack just a second. So he's a lieutenant colonel in the
Yeah.
Canadian Army, and he's what's called in Canada a Vendu. Can
Yeah.
you explain that to our listeners? I have yet to have someone explain to me what does Vendu mean.
It means 22, but it's
Oh,
22 in French. So that's how it turns in English. So in French, we say 22 because it's le 22e régiment in
so
Quebec.
it's the 22nd Regiment.
Yes. But
Okay.
because it's French, everybody like says vendus. And even my husband, because when I wrote it in like English, if I can say, um, my husband correct me and wrote it how we pronounce it because I just wrote 22 with I don't know how to explain that. But yeah, he changed it and it's Vandoo, but it's not
Vandu,
like
but
that.
that's not how it's spelled in
Yeah, no,
French.
no, no. It's just for pronunciation for English. So it's basically 22 in French.
If he has shared this with you at all, how has his integration on a US military installation been? Have people been very welcoming to him? And how has that transition been for him?
I would say it was 50-50, 50 good, 50% bad. And I don't want to use the word bad, but because in his position, the position was empty for a year and a half. So there was no continuity for him. So when he arrived, he was like a jack in the box kind of thing. So they knew he was coming, but because there's so few Canadians, it was all, how to get on base, how to get a computer, how to get your phone. So it was really like, I would say cuisine stuff, not the work itself,
Like
but how
basic.
to, yeah, the basics, how to get there and to work. So that was the most challenging part. So for a month, it was really like, you never know what, and we didn't get our cards to get on base. So, just to get on base was a challenge.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, the hardest part. But then, once all you need to learn, then it was easy. But yeah, that first month, and you've got so many things to figure out, the kids, the schools, doctors, dentists, cars, driver's license, work, how to get there, traffic. It's figuring out everything. And San Antonio is a big city with a country feel, I would say.
Hmm.
So it's amazing because you have a lot of space, but everything takes time. Going to the grocery store is like at least 15 to 20 minutes. So you really have to think ahead of how to get and how long it's going to take. because you have traffic also. So
Yeah,
for
that
him, yeah, the integration was basic, and that was the, I would say, hardest part. But for the work, it was amazing. He got to travel. He got to go back, pre-COVID, he got to go back often to Canada. So yeah, it's a good thing. He likes it.
it was good for him. Yeah, which actually it's a great transition though, talking about some of those challenges, because you had shared with me that you did feel challenged first leading up to the actual move to Texas and some personal things that were happening there as you were getting your posting message, and then struggles when you first arrived. I mean, moving to another location, especially another country, is challenging just all by itself. But throw in the language barrier when you first arrived, because now your kids, they were probably doing awesome, but you said your English wasn't quite where it's at today now, a couple of years later.
No,
So you throw
yes,
in that language barrier, and I know that from personal experience too, that can make every day feel like just a challenge, just a little embarrassing, just a little heavier, just to even go to the grocery store because you're not sure which aisle to go down.
yeah.
So, share with us a little about that whole process, what it was like to get the posting message. How did your teens take that news, that they're going to be leaving their friends and heading not just across the provinces, but way down to big old Texas? And then how did you cope with being in a country that doesn't offer any, I mean, we're talking zero support in your primary language? Tell us what those first few months were like.
Before you get your message, there's always this waiting part. So it was a bit challenging because during that time, I'm sorry, I'm going to be emotional a little bit, but
That's
um,
okay.
my mother-in-law passed, and it was so fast, and we felt far away. We were posted in Moncton, New Brunswick, and we thought we would be there at least 3 to 4 years. So that was the big picture when we left Ottawa. Oh yeah, we will be there for a few years, and it's going to be okay. So our brain was settled for that, and then not even 2 years, we're posting. So we have to move. So it was either, well, do we stay within Canada or we try an OUTCAN? And so San Antonio was presented. So we were like, oh yeah, why not? Never been to Texas, should be fun. I wanted Florida because I knew Florida.
Yeah.
Who doesn't go to
Who doesn't
Florida,
want
right?
Florida? Yeah.
That was easy for me. And then I was like, oh, it's not too far away. It's next to Louisiana. So, it should be fun. But my mother-in-law fell sick. So we learned one day she was in the hospital. 2 weeks later, she passed. So that was a lot to
Yeah.
digest because it wasn't, we couldn't imagine that.
Just so
It was
fast.
crazy. Yeah. And then during that time, we hear, oh, San Antonio should work. And then when we were at the funeral, my husband got the confirmation. Yeah, we're posted.
Mm.
So we're December 10th, and it's like, no, 16, sorry. So from December 16, we have to, we're moving in July. So that's a few months. He's working, his job is very demanding because he's working 40 hours a week, a day, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
He's working full time plus some nights. So that gave us less time to be working on all the challenge that posting OUTCAN is asking. And because the military has to do a lot of things, I couldn't be always hands-on. So I had to wait until he did BGRS or things like that, or talk to his, I don't know the word.
Clerk.
Yeah, let's say the clerk or things like that. So, passport, I couldn't do anything. Visas, I couldn't go and take pictures, everything. And so that's the thing about OUTCAN, the military has to do a lot. So even though you try to help out and, try to speak to people, even though I was working, I had a little bit more time, or I could take time off to do things. I can do a whole lot. And the other thing for me at that point, even though my English was okay, is that a lot of documents were in English.
Only,
So that's
right? Like
challenging
English
because you
only,
read
right?
something and you have a lot to read, right? But
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person who learns when you're on the field.
Hmm.
So even though you tell me it's going to go like this and like this, even if I haven't lived it, it's really hard for me to figure it out. So that's
Picture
how
it.
I,
Like
yeah,
if
picture
you're
it.
not doing it, you can't picture it. Yeah, I totally get that. So just a little explanation. Let me
Yes.
backtrack for just a second. For those of you who may stumble upon this podcast and don't know what she's referring to about what it means that as a spouse, she couldn't have her hands on this process. That's unusual because typically what we have found as military spouses is that when there is a move, the spouses pretty much do all of it. They do all the paperwork. They read all of the instructions. They're called directives, right? They know all the ins and outs. They deal with the mortgages and they deal with all of those things while their military member is working. And the OUTCAN process, it's the first time for a lot of spouses where they can't do all of those things. It's a real loss of control. Let's just be honest. It's typically we're in control of so much of the move process when it's just between provinces. But when you go out, the control is really taken away from you because the process is so different that it requires the military member who isn't used to doing this stuff. They have to now do a lot of this background work because it's something that the spouse can't do. So that's what she's referring to. It's hard. It's hard to sit back and leave it all in the hands of the military and another country. And as you said, it wasn't even in your first language. So you couldn't even, half the stuff you wouldn't be able to figure out even.
Well, I would, but you read something and you think you understood, but then when it happens, you go, oh, well, okay,
That's
that
not
part
what I thought.
I didn't get it.
Google,
Right.
when I was in Quebec, Google Translate was my friend. I copied and pasted everything into Google
Yes.
Translate.
And my husband was traveling a lot. So, we had to wait,
Yeah,
like the screening process. Well, let's say he received an email saying, oh, yeah, you have to go on this day to get screened in wherever on that base. Because we didn't have a base near Moncton. So we had to go to Oromocto, Fredericton,
New
and
Brunswick.
New Brunswick. Yes. So we had to travel there. And I think he got the email, but he wasn't in. So I couldn't know because you need to figure out with school. Well, my kids
That's
wanted
right.
10, and it was during a time of exams. And anyways, it
It's
was
challenging.
challenging
It's a
just, but if you
challenging
don't
period
have
of
kids, I
time.
think it's totally different.
Yeah,
And another thing that is cultural for some francophone, because I don't want to put everybody in the same boat, but we weren't married. So we're common law. And it's a big thing in Quebec.
that's a
You have a
great
lot of
point.
people
Yeah,
that are common law. So because we couldn't get a lot of information, luckily I had some friends that went, I will say OUTCAN, but not within the military, but with other government sections. So I spoke to those people that went OUTCAN, either military or not, and they all told me it's going to be way easier if you're married.
yeah.
So we have to put that also
That's a
in
great
the
point, Anne.
process.
Yeah, that's a really great point that a lot of Canadians don't realize is that marriage laws are different between countries. And so Canada recognizes common law actually fairly quickly. And in the United States, especially when it involves the military, they do not recognize common law. Now, some states do recognize common law marriages, but there's like a whole set of circumstances and it's just a lot more involved. But the military doesn't. So if you want to come on OutCan, what ends up happening is a lot of these common law marriages actually have to go officially get married, have the certificates so that when they come to the United States, they can take advantage of the base services, they can get their health insurance, they can get the work paperwork that they need in order to
Yeah.
have a job. Because if they don't, if they stay common law, they won't be able to
Then you
get any of
cannot
those things.
work. And
Yeah. So
even the
great point, Anne.
insurance, we would have been considered single.
Yeah. The whole
So
thing is
that's
totally
a lot
different.
of to process. So, we had to hurry up because even though you want to get married, it takes a while to have a date. And so, yeah. So we had to figure that one
That's
out
a big deal.
too.
So, once you actually got to the United States, what did it feel like? What were you experiencing that first, let's say, first 3 months? I would say it takes a few months to really settle into your new house and get everything unpacked and start to learn your neighborhood. So, what was that like for you?
Well, I'm going to say at first, so we moved from Canada to Texas and we drove because we turned it in a field trip, kind of.
Yeah.
And so we took a week. We came down, so we got to visit a little. So it was our vacation because we knew that we wouldn't get any vacation after that because my husband would start working right away. So that was great. And we got to see a lot. But the thing is, we only had one car and we had to wait for the second car. And you have to remember that San Antonio is huge. There is basically no public transport. So you cannot say, oh, yeah, I'm going to take the bus to go to the grocery store. Forget that. It's not even happening. And we didn't have our cells. So in a lot of states, you don't have landlines for phone. So our house doesn't have any outlets for any phone. So we needed to buy 4 cell phones. So we came from one little phone that everybody used and the landline phone in the house to get 4 phones. But we didn't have any social security number because my husband, as a military, he doesn't have one. And the process for me to get a social took a few months. So we don't have any credit history. So all the utilities, the phone, everything that needed to be billed was quite a process because they would say, oh, yes. So let's say for our internet. So we got the internet, but because we didn't know, payment didn't go through, didn't work out. At one point, we arrived like a month after, and the internet is cut off because they say you didn't pay, but we did, but it didn't work out because we didn't have a social security number because so many things. So for a week after that, we didn't have any internet. So can you imagine 2 teenagers without internet? That was a bit hard. And we didn't got the phone right away. So that was a challenge. But when we got our second car, I had a little bit trouble, to navigate within the city, to know where to go.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I didn't know, I thought if I go right, I'm good, but I had to go left. So, north, south, east, west, I was really confused at first. And that's always the same thing for me in a city. So just to figure out where to go, I had a GPS, but the GPS, even though speaks English, sometimes it's bad.
Yeah.
The words, the pronunciation, like we have a street called Nacogdoches, but the poor thing doesn't say it. So it says a word for a street, but you
It
don't
doesn't
understand
sound
because
like what it
it
is actually.
sounds, no, it doesn't. So just to try to figure that one out, and the highways and the freeways and all of that was a bit confusing. So the first day we got the second car, because my husband took the car to go to work. So I didn't have a car. But when we got the car, I decided to go with the kids to a trampoline park. But then I got into an accident
Oh, no.
and it wasn't my fault. A lady behind me, we were stuck in traffic, and instead of braking, she put on the gas and she
Yep.
just hit me in the rear. So I didn't have a phone because I left the phone for my husband to have it so I can call
For work.
him
Yeah.
for work because he didn't have any cell phone. So on our HHT, it was challenging to find a house because renting is not a big thing in Texas.
Yeah.
The big thing is to buy a house. So you have agents that can help you out to buy a house, but it was really, really challenging to find an agent who will help us out finding a house. And I heard other experience from other families in Texas where if you don't rent a house on base, their agent just called them and stood them up like the day they arrived. For us, it happened 2 weeks ahead, so we had a little bit of time to figure out and find someone else. But I mean, you don't know the city, so it was challenging. So it took all the week to just figure out where to rent a house, and we had two houses because we don't have a credit history. It doesn't mean that they want to rent you a house. So we were lucky enough that one owner decided to, give us a chance, and he was an immigrant, and he went through the same thing when he came to the United States. So he understood, what we were going through. So he gave us a chance, and he's an amazing guy. But we didn't get the chance to go to school, to the kids' school, because we didn't know in which part of the city we would be in. So once we arrived in July, and I tried to do the registration, well, the school is not like in Canada. So in Canada, they open at least a few weeks before school starts. Here, it's only 2 weeks prior. And I didn't know. So I kept calling and nobody would, call me back. And I went to school physically, and I showed all the vaccine and everything. And we had all the vaccine, but we didn't have the right amount of dosage.
Mm.
So my kids needed 5 different vaccines
Ugh.
to get before school started. And they couldn't register them until I figure out and they get vaccinated. So that was quite something, because we didn't have our insurance already in, and we had a little problem with the Allianz, because I thought my husband did the paperwork and
Right.
told them we were going OUTCAN, but it wasn't done. So our files weren't activated, and we didn't have TRICARE at that point. So we had no insurance. So I called a few places to see, drugstores to see, okay, can I get vaccine? But the vaccines were like $250 each, and I needed
Wow,
5.
that's steep.
Yeah. I called the district, and they helped me out, and they gave me a phone number, and I was able to find a place where I could get the vaccine for free. But I needed to figure out where it was in San Antonio. I needed to take appointments. And anyway, it was a bit overwhelming at that point. And my husband couldn't help it because he was working full time. And I didn't felt like my English was super great. And and most of the time, they speak more Spanish than English also. So,
Yeah.
that was a big challenge. But once we got through this, it was smoother.
I was going to say, so it's so interesting, like hearing you explain so many challenges, such unique challenges because of being OutCam. It sounds overwhelming. And so to hear you now say a couple years later that you love it there, when did that shift happen? About how far into your posting did you really feel that shift happen within you that, okay, I'm starting to like it here. This feels good and I'm really enjoying myself. How long did that take?
Well, I would say for myself, and it's very personal, it got worse. It was overwhelming for up until, so we moved in July 2018, and in, I would say, January 2019, I was tired of that overwhelming thing. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and do some personal growth, because I was tired of the negativity. And when you're a military family, you will move again. So this shenanigan that happened will happen again, because going back to Canada is also challenging, right? I was like, okay, so I need to change the way I'm thinking. And I did, like I said, some personal growth. And that would be at that point, I would say February 2019, I started to have a different perspective, let's say, because, the song that says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That is one of my mantra also, that, I've learned so much during those trying times, because you find so many resources and how you're able to figure everything out, even though it's hard. And that's when I shifted my way of thinking of like, but you know what? It will happen again. So what do you want? Do you still want to be like a victim and crying on yourself and pity parties and stuff like that? Or you want to enjoy your time? So I decided to enjoy my time, because the weather here, like when you go outside, nature is so amazing, and the sun on your face, and that would bring me back. So nature and all the positive energy outside brought me back But you have to decide for yourself. You have to decide, well, today you have the choice of being happy or being negative. So I chose happiness. It's not always easy, but yeah.
No, it's not. Yeah, and you sort of went to that already because I do like to ask our guests if they have any personal mantras that they like to live by. And you had shared a few different things with me, like, I've got this. I love myself and I am proud of myself. And the hard one, I am enough, right?
Yes,
I am enough.
yes.
And you did say that you've really been working these last few years on learning that when things happen to us in life, the perspective we choose to have in those moments can lead us to personal growth. So, as a military spouse, and especially as a francophone military spouse on a US OUTCAN, why do you feel that finding that good perspective was just so important to you? What do you think would have happened if you hadn't found a different perspective that first year?
Well, then the whole outcan experience is just you can take it and just put it in the trash
Mhm.
because you don't enjoy your time. So you're not happy where you are. You don't want to go outside. You don't want to socialize. You want to stay in your bubble. And, with COVID, we're a little bit stuck like that. But if you cannot, make the best of what you have, then every time you will move, every time you will be somewhere else, unless, oh, let's say I want to live in Ottawa. And when I'll be in Ottawa, it's going to be awesome. But, that's not true. If
It will have its challenges too.
yeah, there will be challenges everywhere because your kids are growing. Just for example, in Canada right now, the housing is like just crazy, right? But even though you would be moved to the city you want, maybe you cannot get the house you want, or there's challenges everywhere. So that's, I think, what I comprehend during this time. And the other thing also I would like to say is, even though I could work, because the beginning of my experience was a little bit overwhelming, when every day there's something new. And that's the thing, once you move, there's always something new. So you have to figure out activities and stuff to do and being on the positive side, even though you have challenges. What also made me want to change my perspective is that I'm an example for my kids.
Hmm.
So if I don't pull through, that shows them that when life is difficult, when life throws you lemon, well, maybe you will make lemonade. And if you don't, then they will reproduce that. They won't make lemonade. They will just do the pity party, or I don't know, give
Yeah.
up. So I don't want that for my kids.
Don't forget to check out calfconnection.ca to find information and resources for members and their families specific to your location, whether that's across Canada or at any OUTCAN post. Military Family Services is here for you, regardless of your posted location.
I think that's a great way to transition because part of what you just described of making that shift in your perspective is what led you then to the volunteer work that you are now doing with Military Family Services United States. So, for those listening who may not be familiar with how our OUTCAN families are spread out and how our MFS staff supports these families, I'm just going to take a minute and share so it gives you some context. So, in any given year, we can have between 650 and 750 CAF members, either single or with their families, posted to over 30 states. And that crosses 6 different time zones because we have families all the way out in Hawaii, and then we have families all the way out on the East Coast. Some of these locations have a pretty good number of CAF families, and so MFS has a staff person there to support those families in person. But between 150 and 200 members and their families get posted to at least 20 other states and locations where they may be the only CAF family in that location, or they're just part of a very small group of a few CAF families. These are the families that we call remote, and they are serviced by Military Family Services completely virtually by our MFS outreach coordinator. she really has a big job connecting with all of these families across all of these states and time zones. And so, Anne, you had been connecting with her personally as you and your family were navigating your own posting because you are one of these remote families.
Yes.
And you got to talking with her about how there was a need for virtual volunteers to help support all of these remote families. And you said that talking to her, you realized that there were ways that you could help support other CAF families who were posted OUTCAN, who were feeling overwhelmed like you were, who were feeling the challenges and struggling. And you said that conversation hooked you in. You got hooked. So tell us about that.
Yes. So I'm a person who really likes to help. And since, I did some volunteering with, my kids' school and the mountain bike team and everything. And since I wasn't working, I knew I had a time on my hands. And I thought it was so interesting to see the needs for the CAF families. And when you're posted OUTCAN, that's where you realize the whole picture, I would say. And the outreach part, I didn't realize because I read it in the family guide book, right? So you see the coordinators and who's under what for, each state. And so when you go to Washington, you have a group of CAF families, but here you're all by yourself. And I've learned through that experience that there are other families, like Canadian families within San Antonio, but we're on different bases and we're so spread out that it's really hard to meet one another, and COVID hit. So, we're not meeting. But yeah, the thing is, and what hooked me is that I felt with my experience and how I felt, I knew that other people would be like that, and maybe even francophone families. So I was like, well, you know what? I have my experience. I know how to maneuver now. So I would like to add something. So those next families that would, let's say, come to San Antonio or anywhere else, OUTCAN, won't have to go through what I've been through because we can give that information. Just like, for example, the CAF Connection website. Under Texas and under San Antonio, there wasn't a lot of information. So when I heard that we could write something and this could be posted on the website, I thought it was such a great idea. So I decided to write something, but it's a basic. If I had that once I've moved, then, that would have helped me figure out just the grocery stores or the school districts or stuff like that. So yeah, and the coordinator is such a great person. All the military not military, I'm sorry, the MFS employees are so nice. I got to, know you and know other coordinators that speaks French. And, we will talk about my Francophone cafe, and just to learn how everything works everywhere and reality that are so different from state to state. I felt the need to bring something to the table. If I'm not working, then it's my family. The military is my family. So why not bring something to the table and bring my voice, voice myself and maybe add something with my Francophone flavor, right? Add some
I love
flavor.
Well, we love a little flavor, and you did add something. So you started your volunteering by taking over the administration of Rocky, our MFSUS traveling ambassador, taking applications for his host families, making sure he is getting to his destinations, and then gathering the information he collects from those families and sharing that with our outreach coordinator to help her better understand what is going on in the different states. Tell us a little bit about who Rocky is and why you wanted to get involved with him.
So Rocky is a sweet teddy bear from Canada. And this guy is really, really amazing because he gets to travel across the United States.
I have to admit,
And
I'm always a little jealous of
me too.
Rocky's amazing experiences. I'm like, how is this stuffed teddy bear getting better life experiences than me?
Yes, ma'am. It's just amazing because this teddy bear, like I said, gets to travel and get to visit the families that are willing to greet him for 2 weeks. So if you are interested to have Rocky in your family, and you don't have to be a family, you can be a single member, you can be a couple. And the thing is, we want to learn what's going on your posting. So where do you like to go? And Rocky is so amazing because he will try anything. And as long as you take pictures with Rocky, he's going to be happy. And this
Doesn't
will
he have
really,
doesn't he
yeah,
have a little passport book that
he
travels with him?
does. Yes, so you have a passport. So Rocky comes with everything. He's in a box. He even have his own passport, so you can write whatever experience you have with him during those 2 weeks. You get to have a map where you can, put a little sticker where he's been. And we have a Facebook page where you can post all your great experience and travel with Rocky. And all that Facebook page also, you can request Rocky. So all the information is on our Facebook page. And I'm trying to have either in French or English the experience. So even though you're a francophone family, you can post in French.
Yes.
And if you speak English, it's fine. We have Rocky also. He's bilingual. So we don't have any
Because he's
problem.
our ambassador, he has to
Yeah,
be.
he has to be.
Now, I believe that somebody did make a mask for Rocky in honor of COVID, and I assume that there is some disinfecting happening between postings.
Yes, when COVID hit, I had Rocky. So I asked one of my neighbor to sew a little mask for him so he would be COVID appropriate. And we even joined a little bag so you can put him in the bag and wash it in the washing machine at Delicate Cycle. So I've put also the information how to wash him. So at least like from family to family, he's germ free.
He's clean. And we do have pictures of Rocky flying. We have him with astronauts. We have him with alligators, theme parks. I mean, this bear has been everywhere.
Everywhere. So we really are eager to learn, all the experience. And the kids, when he goes in a family, the kids are just happy to have that teddy bear. They sleep with him, they have a blast. So, I mean, this is such a great idea. And I think it should be spread out even to Canadian families and Europe, everywhere across the world. We should have a Rocky or another bear or whatever animal that could be, but I think it's such a great way to gather information and to see great things that you wouldn't be able to see.
That's right.
So,
If anybody is hearing this and is interested in hosting Rocky, you can get the information and fill out the host request form by going to calfconnection.ca/United States, and you can find his information under the Get Involved tab. So, another way that you have volunteered this past year was by offering to host the Francophone Cafe. This is a virtual coffee hour where you invite other Francophones to come join the conversation, hang out, and just get to communicate with each other in your primary language. Why did you feel, Anne, that this was so important to start for our French families?
well, as a Francophone, I'm going to rewind a little bit and go back in my early years of as a military spouse. Never been out of Quebec, and we're posted in Wainwright, Alberta, and I got pregnant. And my English at that point was, I would say, not too great. And I was working in a Francophone school. So, I had still my little French bubble. But then I got pregnant. And, when you're pregnant and you are giving birth, it's way easier to have it in your own language. So when it hurts or, when you're about to give birth, it's pretty intense. And everything
Hard to
was in
think about it.
English.
hard to think about
right.
translating in your head when you're in the
So,
middle of
so my
labor.
husband is great. He's pretty, full bilingual. So he had to be there next to me because I was speaking in French. I couldn't even imagine, trying to say whatever in English when you're just hurting and, it's a bit overwhelming. The feeling I felt at that point, not being able to communicate, and it's a very intimate situation, right? So I felt that when I was in the US, and I know some families don't really speak English that well. And I'm always thinking about the spouse that is left at home, because it doesn't mean the person, and it can be men or women, doesn't mean they will be working, because sometimes the language barrier is too great to be able to work. So I was like, I would like to have a coffee, because I usually, go to the outreach coffee hour every Friday afternoon. And I thought it was such a great connection. But then again, it's in English and it's fine. But all the information you get and all the inputs you get from other people and other perspective, that, you think something happens, and just to get it out there and have another perspective or opinion from another spouse that has different experience, that is just amazing. So I thought, well, if you can do that in French, that weight on your shoulder is kind of lifted, because you don't have to think and translate in your mind and looking for words and wonder and trying to. Sometimes we have sayings in French that are so different or don't even exist in English, that trying to, make sense and expressing that, I feel that it's harder.
Mm,
So sometimes I feel that when I speak in English, it's more in surface, that in
yeah.
French I can go deeper. And
Mm,
that's what I miss the most when I'm talking to people, because I'm not struggling, because I think my English is pretty good now.
it's very
But
good.
the thing that I cannot go as deep, because
Yeah.
the vocabulary is not there. Yeah,
Yeah, I have to
go
tell
ahead.
you, I came in to one of the coffees towards the end of it. And of course, I don't understand a word of it. But there was another francophone spouse who was there, who I've had interactions with for the past year. And I sat in amazement as I heard her just talking. I heard her say more in that 10 minutes than I'd heard her speak in the whole year prior. I mean, it was just, you could just see the joy of being able to do what you just said, fully express herself in a way that she couldn't do in her everyday interactions because of having to do that all in English. And it was a joy to watch. I had no clue what was being said, but I could see the fullness. I could see the depth that was happening, and that was really incredible. And so that what an amazing thing to volunteer to do, to offer that to these other families who may be experiencing that feeling of no one really knows me. I can't really be myself. And I just think that you have offered something really wonderful to our francophone families who may be feeling that surface feeling.
I would like to add also that it's a little bit hard to get those families in, because Zoom is like a big thing now. Everything is on Zoom, right? And because they don't know us, maybe they don't feel not welcome, but they're a little, I would say, shy, because, I would say a military family, military culture, you're supposed to be autosufficient.
Mm,
And my one of my mantra, I am enough. It's okay to go and ask for help, or it's okay to join a group to talk about whatever you're going through, good or bad. So I think that I would like to send a message that it's okay to join the Francophone community or cafe, because you will get to meet people and you will get to speak French. And even though it's just half an hour, it's such a relief,
mm,
because you don't have to think. It just flows, because you speak French and it's easy.
I love
So
it.
just for that, And even though you don't want to speak, it feels so good to hear French or hear people living the same experiences than you are. And so you feel less alone.
Mm.
So that's the part that's the reason I really wanted to start that. So we don't feel alone. Even though I don't, it's just an extra. It's just like cherry on top.
So, if a French family is listening to the podcast right now and they are considering an OUTCAN posting, or maybe they're right in the process of moving OUTCAN, what words of encouragement and wisdom would you like to share with them as we wrap up? And please feel free to answer in both languages.
I will start in French, and there's this saying, après la pluie, le beau temps. So, ça se peut que quand vous allez déménager aux États-Unis, ça va être vraiment peut-être difficile, mais une fois arrivé, une fois que tout est en place, c'est tellement une expérience enrichissante que je le conseille à tout le monde parce que les défis que vous allez rencontrer vraiment vont vous donner une force que vous ne connaissiez pas et ça va vous faire aussi connaître les environs. Ça vous fait voyager, ça vous fait connaître une autre culture, puis c'est une expérience fabuleuse pour vos enfants. Alors, moi, pour le côté enfant, c'est magnifique. Puis, même si vous êtes célibataire ou un couple, les expériences culturelles sont fabuleuses. La base, tout dépendant des bases où vous pouvez être envoyé, l'expérience américaine est fabuleuse. So what I just said was that the experience, even though you will have some challenges, the experience and all the positive you will get within your experience is much wider than the difficulties you will encounter, that I would say, yes, go for it. Go, go, go. You need that in your experience, little backpack there. Because, usually, we travel to the US. We've been to Florida, but you don't stay in the community. You go there a week, 2 weeks, but the fact that you get to live in a community for 2, 3 years, that is such a powerful experience. I always say experience, but I mean, it's amazing. I don't have any words that amazing. And you get to travel, you get to see. Just like people that going to Europe, it's the same thing, but in the United States. And you get to know the people, you get to know reality here. Because I feel that what we hear on the news and reality is two different things.
Excellent point. As an American, I really appreciate that point, that just what you see, the hyper sensational stuff on the news, that's not necessarily the experience you're going to have when you come and live with these people.
Definitely.
Great perspective.
Definitely. Like you said, what we hear in the news, there are people just like us. And people in Texas, there are people just like us. And what they want peace and they want love. And that's about it. Everybody wants to live, earn their living. So that's the basic of everybody. So anywhere you move, you will find those people. But you will find more difficult characters. And that's everywhere.
Isn't that the truth? And I really admire the positive perspective that you and your family have taken while navigating the OUTCAN experience. Instead of letting language become a barrier, you have become a volunteer champion for our French families. And we are very thankful that you have allowed us to share your French voice of OUTCAN. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for this experience and for letting me express my experience. I'm very, very happy to be part of the CAF family. And I hope the best for anybody who's posted in the US. And if they have anything, please reach out the MFS US, MFS Outreach, because it's a great team. And I cannot say thank you enough.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you for listening to the Voices of OUTCAN podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, Please subscribe to hear when new episodes are released and share with other military families and their supporters. Check out our Voices of OUTCAN podcast information and all of the other resources and supports offered by MFSUS on our CAF Connection web pages at cafconnection.ca/United States. To all of our Canadian military members and your families, we thank you for your service.